Again, I'm always thrilled to see the little squares populating. It's wonderful. So let's have a few minutes of sitting together and remembering that in sitting zazen, that the nature of all things is wakefulness. That's the foundation on which we're sitting. There's nothing. It reminds me of my old days in listening to sermons in the Christian church in which I was raised, when you'd hear the pastor say, something is already accomplished. But in this case, it's already accomplished. So there's no strain or stress. You can rest into and allow yourself be held by the truth of the matter, which is your nature as wakefulness expressing itself in embodied form, and sit with that reality that we can share and enjoy. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. I always like to remember in chanting that particular verse, the verse of the robe. Vast is the robe of liberation. What's vast is liberation, not suffering. What's most vast is liberation. And that's what we're constantly held in and part of, and it moves through us and what we express. So our chants, which we've been doing some different ones, and I'm going to introduce you to another one today based on our topic. They're very inspiring to me. I love chanting, whether it's after meditation like we just did, or in morning or evening service, or sometimes in ceremonies and during work practice or at meals. And they... the chants themselves can be inspiring, but it's really the effort, the energy that we bring forward to offer the chant, which is important, because that's the embodiment of our aspirations and our vows, of whatever realization we might have, in our commitment to our practice, the arousal, that effort, and then using our voice in those chants. It's much more important than the content of the chant sometimes. And whether we recite these things daily or just on special occasions, they do help, like all forms, to help shape and confirm and expand zazen and our other mindfulness practices. And by familiarizing ourselves with them and in doing them together, not just listening, but actually using your voice and your body, it's as if you're accessing the true spirit of Zen. Not just the content or the idea, but the spirit of Zen practice. And it's very important. And some of them are unfamiliar, or the languaging may be quite unusual for you, but the unusualness and the way that they're not totally ordinary are the prompts for inquiry. And they plant seeds for, I wonder what that is, like a koan or something. It invites us. And there is one of the chants that we use in retreat are the gathas, or chants for meal service, for meals. And there's a part of the longer chant called the Five Contemplations. And I'm going to share it just for a second so you can see it, because many of you are unfamiliar with it. And you'll see why I would like for us to use it today. I'll pull it up for us here. These are the 5 reflections that we use in our meal chant. 72 labors brought us this food. We should know how it comes to us. As we receive this offering, we should consider whether we understand its nature. As we desire the natural order of mind to be free from clinging, we must be aware of our greed. We take this food to support our life. We take this food to attain the way. In our ordinary meal chant, there's more that goes beyond this, but these are the five uh, reflections that we use in our meal chant. And you can see the reason that I thought of it is because in the United States, yesterday was Labor Day. 72 laborers brought us this food. So I'll return to it in just a bit. But 72 laborers brought us this food. I'm going to reflect just a tiny bit on Labor Day itself, which we celebrated yesterday because some people aren't in the United States. And even those of us who are, do you really know what it is? It's not crucial, but I thought it was interesting, and I'm going to borrow a bit from one of my favorite historians and writers, Heather Cock Richardson, which I know a lot of you. Uh, if you haven't heard of Heather Cox Richardson, Letters to an American Each Day, she writes beautiful things. She's a history professor. And this is a small piece taken out of something that she wrote on Monday. She said, 140 years ago, on September 5th, 1882, workers in New York City celebrated the first Labor Day holiday with a parade. And I, I thought about you, Rosemarie. She said the parade almost didn't happen. There was no band, and no one wanted to start marching without music. But once the Jewelers Union of Newark showed up with musicians, the rest of the marchers, eventually numbering about 10,000 or to 20,000 men and women, fell in behind them to parade through Lower Manhattan. And at noon, when they reached the end of the route, the march broke up and the participants listened to speeches and drank beer and had picnics. That's what we do, on Labor Day. Other workers joined them. Their goal was to emphasize the importance of workers in the industrializing economy, the late 19th century, and to warn politicians that they could not be ignored. So Labor Day is a day of celebration of something our ancestors enacted, and a day of remembering their dreams as laborers. And their dream has continued to open and to close and to be torn apart and to heal, just like all of life is. And this is just one day we celebrate in this particular way regarding work and the humanity of workers, which is all of us. And lately, I've been reminding us of our Zen ancestors, those who dreamed of a world of wakeful compassion, a world of kindness and generosity, of hard work and creativity, of birth and death and grief and mercy all along the way. Along the shared path of grace, which moves in wondrous and sometimes terrifying ways, we call our life. And our ancestors created chants which they could use together as an accompaniment of everyday ordinary things like eating a meal, of working. In work practice in a monastery, we offer chants. In meals, we offer a chant. Something ordinary in this case, like eating, or being nourished and sustaining our life. And the gata that we just chanted was a part of something larger from oryoki, the very elaborate meal that monastics used to use in Asian monasteries. The one that we're using was adapted from Dogen in the 13th century. But in the 8th century, Baizhang used to say, a day without work is a day without eating. A day without work is a day without eating. It was a monastic, kind of a punchy thing that said, if you're going to be nourished by this world, offer yourself to the world. If you're going to receive the food, then engage in the monastery and help out. And out of all the schools of Buddhism, Zen is the one that's, I think, unique in viewing manual labor as an essential, integral part of practice. If you go to Tassajara, where I trained, or other monasteries, we think, oh, monastery, we're going to go meditate and study the Dharma. You do that a little bit, but most days you're working, most all day long. You sit early in the morning while the kitchen is working, right, Josh? Where everybody, that's all happening. And then you do service and then you go to work. And the kitchen continues to work. That never stops, actually. And people are harvesting things and cleaning things, and work in this way doesn't just provide the wherewithal for sustenance, but offers an opportunity to practice in a wholehearted, mindful way. And those of you that have been work leader in retreats know this, because you begin over time to erase the dividing line between what's secular and sacred. And this is what our practice is for. And when you contribute to the world with labor, we ask ourselves, have I offered myself? Have I contributed to the process of realizing my wakefulness and the wakefulness of others through our vows and our intentions, through zazen and wise and compassionate activity in the world? In the Ehe Shingi, which is the instructions to the cook that Dogen wrote, specifically for the kitchen, that part of labor in the monastery, he talked about treating all the ingredients with equanimity. But remember, this is an analog for the whole world, for all of our lives. He's just talking about the instructions for the Tenzo. It's a model of all labor, of all work, in the spirit of deepening practice. I'm going to read just a brief bit from a translation, but listen to the spirit of it. He said, in preparing food, and remember, every time I say in preparing food, because we're talking about the kitchen, think of in living your life. In preparing food, never view it from the perspective of usual mind or on the basis of feeling tones. If you have only wild grasses with which to make a broth, do not disdain them. If you have ingredients for a creamy soup, do not be delighted. Where there is no attachment, there can be no aversion. Do not be careless with poor ingredients. And do not depend on fine ingredients to do your work for you, but work with everything with the same sincerity. Work with everything in your life with the same sincerity. A rich buttery soup is not better as such than a broth of wild herbs. In handling and preparing wild herbs, do so as you would the ingredients for a rich feast, wholeheartedly, sincerely, clearly. When you serve the monastic assembly, they and you should taste only the flavor of the ocean of reality, the ocean of unobscured, aware wakefulness. Not whether or not the soup is creamy or made of wild herbs. In nourishing the seeds of living in this way, rich food and wild grasses are not separate. Wild grasses can nourish the seeds of Buddha and bring forth the buds of the way. Do not regard them lightly. So it's unusual, but you hear that he's not just speaking about food, is he? He's saying in the preparation of food, in the kitchen, this is the way to orient yourself. But that's an orientation to life. Your experience with others and of your own life should taste the flavor of the ocean of reality, the ocean of unobscured awake awareness. Why would he say that about food? We're nourishing the seeds of living in the way, capital W. And he says, don't disparage things that are poor and don't grab onto things that are good. It's like, well, that doesn't sound like much fun. It's kind of joyless. Like he's saying, pay no attention to the wonderful tastes and the pleasure of eating. Well, I don't think that's what he's actually trying to communicate. Because in fact, later on, he writes, This life we live is a life of rejoicing. This body, a body of joy, which can be used to present offerings to the three jewels, to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It arises through the merits of eons, and thus its merit extends endlessly. Whereas we receive it, so we pass it on. I hope that you will work. Here's labors. I hope that you will work and cook in this way, using this body with its fruition of thousands of lifetimes and births to create a limitless benefit for numberless beings. To understand this opportunity is a joyous heart. Because even if you've been born a ruler of the world, the merit of your actions would merely disperse like foam, like sparks. In other words, even if you're like a big deal, guess what? It all goes away. What's important is that you work and engage, in this case cook, using your body, which is the fruit of many lifetimes, to benefit other beings. This is the body of joy. He even goes on later, he takes it further, he talks about love. A parent raises a child with deep love, regardless of poverty or difficulties. Their hearts cannot be understood by another. Only a parent can understand it. So he goes on to talk about this. He says this kind of care can only be understood by those who have given rise to it and realized only by those who practice it. This kind of joy in parenting, but really he's talking about the joy of love, and not just the love of a child, but the love of our life. He said the vast heart, this vast heart, if you understand working in this way, in the kitchen or anywhere else, if you understand labors in this way, this vast heart does not regard a gram as too light or 5 kilos as too heavy. It does not follow the sounds of spring or try to nest in a spring garden. It does not darken with the colors of autumn. He's saying we don't discriminate. We appreciate and plunge into our life and offer it back. So with a right view and right intention, everything becomes practice. Shopping, cooking, eating, cleaning up, all labor. The whole world then emerges as this cauldron, this cooking pot for our awakening. 72 labors brought us this food. We should know how it comes to us. As we receive this offering, we should consider whether we understand its nature. As we desire the natural order of mind to be free from clinging, we must be aware of our greed. We take this food to support our life. We take this food to attain the way. So for some of this is so familiar. We've said it so many times. 72 labors brought us this food. We should know how it comes to us. This is an opportunity to both acknowledge the inner connectedness of all life and to express our gratitude for it in that first line. Second line, as we receive this offering, we should consider whether we understand its nature. This is an open inquiry. Has our day been aligned with our vows and intentions? Are we living out our aspirations in accord with the Dharma through the refuges and the precepts? The third line, as we desire the natural order of mind to be free from clinging, we must be aware of our greed. Well, this is just a truncated heart of the Four Noble Truths. Suffering comes from clinging and aversion, and liberation from overcoming greed, hate, and ignorance. So meals or labor are an opportunity to practice non-greed, especially meals. To eat what's needed for our health and well-being, but not more. And to accept the meal as it is without comparing it to other meals we've enjoyed in the past. To be grateful for what's come our way. And the fourth and fifth are paired together. We take this food to support our life. We take this food to attain the way. We remember that we eat in order to live. We take this food to support our life. But just surviving is not enough. We eat to fulfill our vows and to realize the way in support of all beings. We take this food to attain the way. So Labor Day is one day in one particular way to celebrate what we must keep in mind every day. That we are here and exist by the grace of everything else and everyone else. And if you live your way into this realization, I mean, really live your way into this realization, this dynamic reality, and it continues to open to you and for you, you are necessarily going to stumble into a great, deep well of generosity, which is constantly being fed like a deep underground spring. It's refreshing and nourishing. So just for a moment, let's go back. These 5 reflections. Let's make them Labor Day reflections. 72 labors brought us this food. We should know how it comes to us. Innumerable things make our life possible. We should appreciate how we come to be. As we receive this offering, we should consider whether we understand its nature. As we receive and realize the gift of our very lives, we should consider whether we understand our nature. With each breath. As we desire the natural order of mind to be free from clinging, we must be aware of our greed. As we aspire to lives free from suffering, we must be aware how self-centered clinging contributes to unnecessary suffering. We take this food to support our life. We take this food to attain the way. In humble gratitude, we accept what is generously offered in support of our lives and realize our lives as the way. This is our reflections for Labor Day as extensions of our meal chant. So I hope some of these things have brought forward some reflections on your own life, your own labors, your efforts, the spirit of your practice. And what questions do you have, or areas that are do your aspirations match your hopes for your life? Or are you caught in certain ways that you want to explore? What comes forward? If we were walking in a nice path, or we were hiking together holding hands, what would you turn to me and say or ask now? Or would you walk silently, which is fine? There you go, you're unmuted now.
Hello, Flint. Hello, everyone. I'm just so caught, Flint, by the first line. In connection to Sunday evening, our head student, Don Coleman, gave his Way Seeking Mind Talk, which I know you were there. And what I talked to Don about afterwards, I was so struck with each step of the way that brought him to this moment. And essentially that's what way-seeking minds are.
Yeah.
We could call it, what are all the steps that you think brought you to this moment?
Mhm.
And that language in the reflection, 72 labors brought us this food. All of these actions, all of these moments, all of the curiosities, all of the decisions to respond to what showed up. And Don had really interesting things happen that
Yeah.
had him think, oh, I'm going to pay attention here. And as I thought about it later, I thought it's not just our curiosities, because we can be quite attached to our curiosities that can take us off to all kinds of tangents. But our curiosities can alert us to whether or not it matches, as you said, matches our aspiration
Right. And our vow.
and our vow. And then if it does, and it seems like a good idea, then we put our efforts or our labors into it. And
And follow it up with noticing the impact.
yes, yes,
How's it going?
yes, exactly, exactly. The other thing I thought of, having being a woman who birthed two children, and we call it labor, um, and women online who have labored, um, it's the same thing. What brought us to this moment? Because that labor takes over our body, and there is no controlling it.
Right.
But
Mhm.
somehow we're in this circumstance. So what are we going to do with it? Um, I just so thank you so much for
A lot
putting
of threaded through there, isn't there?
so much threaded through here.
Well,
Yes.
when I thought of that line, which is ordinary for most of us, we hear it all the time when we chant
Mhm.
at 72. And 72 labors originally came from a monastic kind of thing, but it means innumerable. And some of
Mhm.
the translations don't say 72. It
Mm.
says innumerable
Innumerable.
because it just means everything, even the stuff we don't even know.
Mhm.
The way-seeking mind is only skipping on the surface in some ways, of all the vast numbers of things.
Yes.
But touching those things is really inspiring.
Very inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you for your inspiration, Flint.
Thank you for yours and all of your labor, all the kinds that you've done.
Right, all kinds. Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Flint. Well, as you were reading from Dogen about the instructions for the cook, I was thinking, oh man, I am hardly never, as I lead my life, in that space, in that space of wholehearted awareness. And I was, I accept that, but I was kind of shaking my head at myself. And then um, when you said two things actually. One of the things you said, many things, but one of the things that you said is that we're here by the grace of everyone else, and then something after that that I
And
missed,
everything else.
and everything else, right? And then you said something about appreciating how we came to be. And it occurred to me that that's kind of an opening for me because generosity, no, well, that's not true. Gratitude.
Gratitude.
Gratitude is, it comes very easily to me. I am so grateful for so many things. And there's a softening in it. And if I think I can kind of prompt myself numerous times during the day to appreciate how I've come to be and that I'm here by the grace of everything else and everyone else. And so I think that might um, kind of actualize my being more mindful as I live my life. And I just want to thank you for that. I'll keep you posted.
Yes.
But
And that's,
gratitude is it's a great
yeah,
door, right?
that's the doorway. That's what I was going to say. So I'm
Right,
glad you said it. That's the portal,
right,
the Dharma gate.
right,
And as you step through it and you feel gratitude, you're not quite as caught in the grasping.
right. The grasping to live a
Whatever,
meaningful,
it's like
more,
you feel
right,
some that begins to soften. And so you
right,
actually begin, it's like something coming into view that wasn't, you weren't so close to before,
right,
which is that primary wakeful awareness, which has actually been with you the whole time.
right.
How else would you have known that you were grasping?
Exactly. Right.
It was reflected
Yeah.
in that mirror. So as you
Right.
step through that portal, you begin to rest. I'm going forward, but it's almost like you're stepping back.
It's all there.
It's all there. It's always been there. Yes, the
Right.
expression may not be in alignment with your vow, but the vow hasn't left you. And
Right.
the
That's
fundamental
right.
aspiration
Right.
is right there. And
Right.
gratitude helps us return to it.
Yeah. So
Are you noticing it right now as we talk?
yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the prompt of gratitude.
Yeah, because
It's
it's shifting
all
as we talk. I
encompassing.
can see. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's
Yeah.
how that's the grace of everyone and everything
Right.
moving now here.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yes. Ah, Jay.
Hi guys. All right. Um I'm curious because um something that was said at the beginning about the the mundane or the secular, and I'm like, is there such a thing? Can Isn't everything divine? Like, how can you create a secular? You know what I mean? Like, so
You're
and
such a
this
great.
is
That's great, Jay. You're right on the money, man. Because
oh, okay.
you can get on one side and say everything is ordinary, right? I mean, everything is just ordinary, and everything is sacred and divine. It depends
Okay.
on where you're standing, but it's actually what Zen practice is to help us see that they're not separate things.
Okay.
Precisely your question. You're right on it.
Okay. I was like, so
We use we
thank
use
you.
the,
So,
we use those words because they're sometimes called the two truths. It's like it just depends on where you're
mm,
standing. It looks this way or it looks that way. Um, but there's a way in which we hold the fullness of it all without having to make these distinctions.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
thank you for saying it. Thank you for underlining it for us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
Bye.
And oh, by the way, I'm going to just say this. If you have Don's Way Seeking Mind Talk is recorded, I assume, and will be available so you could hear it by connection to the Open Doors Zen Community website.
Couple
And
days.
it's it's uh, it's wonderful in and of itself, and also it's wonderful the voice of a black man speaking about this. So listen. Mhm. You're
I
trying to.
can.
There you are. Okay, great.
I can't imagine many things nicer than walking with you along a country lane in the Peak District or in Devon. Just a lovely thought. Um, I loved the extracts you read from Duggan about the life of joy. Yeah. But I think if I was walking along with you, I would turn to you and I would say, actually, how how the meal chant has often uh, seemed to me and how it really landed with me tonight, given the situation in England of people in a lot of poverty, a lot of people using food banks, being terrified they can't eat their food, can't heat their homes or feed their children. So how it landed on me was very, very politically.
Sure.
Yeah. And and I know that's narrowing it down. Well, it isn't really because It isn't. It felt like widening it up into an inquiry of, well, who made this food? Who delivered it to me? How much did they get paid? How much profit was made out of them? What ingredients have gone into it? What exploitation of other communities have been involved in that? You know,
Hmm.
and to vow really to try to buy my food in the most ethical way.
And
I
what's the
think
carbon
that's
footprint?
really how it's landed on me. Uh,
Good, good, because it reaches everywhere. It doesn't stop. This kind
oh,
of inquiry reaches everywhere.
yes, yes.
Eh, Precisely. And an important thing to think of on the day of a brand new prime minister in the UK, wondering what will happen, if anything, who knows, you know?
I was also thinking Labour Day, and I was thinking about where I grew up in Durham. And every year there was a Durham Miners Gala where there'd be brass bands and people would come out on the streets and there'd be speeches. But it was a kind of expression of solidarity
Hmm.
with everybody. But it was also a protest. And as you said about the American Labour Day, a kind of warning.
Yes, yeah. And it's still here, isn't it?
Yes,
That's
yes.
why I said the dream of those ancestors has been built up and crushed and mended and changed. It just keeps rolling like so much in our lives. And so we practice to attend to all of these, to keep the dreams, the beauty, and also to meet the difficulties, because goodness knows they're here right now. Yes, thank you for widening our view in that way.
Thank you.
And I was just thinking, if we were in Devon, there is the juxtaposition, a little bit like Jay was talking about, of seeing the beauty of the bluebells and smelling the wild garlic. It's like putting these two things together. Can you imagine that, right?
Oh, I'm there, as you
I
say
know.
it.
Me too.
I'm in those woods.
Exactly. Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks, Flint.
Hi, Flint.
Aloha, you're back home, huh?
Aloha. Yes, I'm here. And
I felt you waving at me across the channel.
I was, the where I was in Hawaii was directly across from Malachi, so I was like waving every day. So it was
Yeah.
really, really nice. Um, this was such a rich talk, and I just wanted to say before you even began, I'm looking at all the thumbnail photos of everyone, and I was thinking, it's distracting that we're not looking at our hearts,
Mm.
because for me, I feel like the visual distracts from the thing I'm most interested in. And yeah, so I get distracted.
Do you see my heart?
Yeah,
Why are you not distracted?
because I feel close to you. Yeah.
And how do you do that? Because this, when you see this and I see that, I am seeing your heart. It looks like that. It comes forward like the flower opens up and it looks like a rosemary.
Well,
It
that's
looks like a
interesting because, yeah, I think I get confused with that the visual doesn't show the heart. It really
yeah.
does. But I think
Sometimes it
I get,
doesn't. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it
So,
really
so
does.
your tears and your tenderness to me feel a little bit like grief, like a longing to see the
Yeah,
heart
yeah, absolutely.
and to be seen.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of longing, yeah. And
Yeah.
my question, if we were walking along together,
On the beach.
yes, on Malachi, let's say, um, would be as I literally end a part of my work, um, how, in thinking about how to involve myself going forward, how do I guess, make those choices with more, from a deeper level?
So that I understand that aspiration to make them from a deep level. What's
Yeah.
something deeper moving with it? What's the deep thing that's moving with it?
Well, I think that I as I get involved in this practice, I think I get confused with what it's supposed to look like. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a, I have a history of performing. Of course, I'm an older person now, so I'm not going to, you know, get up and do pirouettes. Um, but there are all these aspects of me. Um, and this practice is one of them. It has become one of them, a really important one. And yeah, I think I want to ensure, I guess this would be our conversation,
Yes.
that I'm not rejecting any of parts of me, important creative parts, for example, in my choices, in order to, um, look more Zen-like. You see, this is where what we started with how everything looks.
Well, what a wise reflection you're having. You don't want to exile any part of yourself.
Exactly.
Because our practice, if its function is to open us to an open, free, compassionate life, not to restrict us. This isn't about becoming purified or some weird
Exactly.
notion of religiosity, it's not that at all. It's to be able to do or imagine the pirouettes and cartwheels on the beach. To be free to do whatever is needed or required and to not be stuck. It's a freeing up, it's not a narrowing down. Because the world needs all of you, just like you have that longing for the world to meet you, to come to you, to see the truth of the matter everywhere. And we need to
I,
be freed up, not narrowed down.
um, I wanted to thank Kathy for the gratitude spotlight, because I felt that that might be a a guiding light in terms of this question,
It is.
because whatever I have, whatever who I am, has come from a lot of different people and a lot of different places and a lot of different encouragement and positivity. And so I'm not making something up from nothing.
No, that's the core of practice. And if you understand that, that's the light that you'll follow that you're actually longing for. It's coming from your own heart and from those that, like Kathy, that you hear and connect with, and you begin to reflect each other. That's our job in inquiry. That's why we have all these little squares.
Yeah. Thank you,
What a,
Kathy.
yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of the equanimity and the bitter soup and the creamy soup, like Catherine was saying, our political system right now, situation globally, everything is a pretty bitter soup, and it's scary. And to see what you said before about liberation is so vast, suffering is not as vast. I think you said that, something like that.
Yeah, what's most vast is
It's
liberation.
liberation. So, somehow that fits with the equanimity of the bitter soup and the creamy soup. That
It's not that we don't have preferences. I'm gonna next weekend after next, I'm gonna be teaching in a one-day retreat with the Awakening Together group in Minneapolis. And we're going to use the Shin Shin Ming as part of the text there. They're great ways, not difficult, for those who are unattached to their preferences. I'd rather have a nice creamy soup than a bitter one. Absolutely. But if I appreciate that what's given to me and what's made for me, and this is what I have, and I can appreciate it, then it becomes sweet in its own way, even though it may not be the thing I prefer. So it's not that we don't notice our preferences, but we're not um, mesmerized by them,
Yeah,
submerged by
and
them.
I think we're not grading them, as I think you said. We're not grading. There are no levels.
Yeah. And if we do notice up, down, right, wrong, good, bad, all these things, a little bit like what Jay was saying, secular, mundane, or spiritual, or elevated, or something, we notice them, but once again, you don't get enchanted by them. Our dualistic mind is going to notice those things. It's not going to stop noticing. So don't think there's something wrong with you about that. Yes, we notice. Can we be the space in which all of that noticing can arise and pass away without identifying with it and getting caught? And that's the narrowing. It's more like on the front of your top there. We move in circles. And those circles are open.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's space, there's breathing room in it. Mhm. It's not the straight and narrow.
Thank you.
Thank you for your good questions. There's a word some of you know in Hawaiian. Hi, Josh, come on in. Uh, Kuleana, which means what's your responsibility? What's your in life, you know? Josh?
Flint, uh, I've been cooking since you started your talk, and during all the years that I was Tenzo, I think you get the opportunity to become an ingredient yourself,
Hmm.
um, to become part of the big the big piece of being in the kitchen. And I was reflecting on the book, How to Cook Your Life, and I was thinking about how life, cooks us. And so my question to myself is, am I feeling as though I'm being cooked?
Mhm.
And I was thinking, what a what a practice that could be, to think about in your practice. Are you being cooked?
Mhm.
Um, and there's
Which
something
means there are
about,
times in which you're going to feel the heat.
yeah, yeah. But is there some aliveness and dynamism going on
Mhm.
in the process that you allow yourself to open to being cooked?
Yeah, the alchemy of what happens to those ingredients.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I was going back, as we were reflecting at different parts of my life. Was I being cooked?
Mhm. That's
So
very different than the ordinary way of saying, am I doing the cooking?
yeah, yeah. So I will take that away from this evening. Well, this evening here.
Yes,
So
of course, of course.
thank you so much.
Yes, I always remember that moment of handing over my copy of the Tenso Kyokan to you
Mm, mm.
and saying, you might want to read this.
Yeah,
And look how you've been cooked.
yeah,
Lately, you've even had a little, it
yeah.
seemed like it. You don't see it so much now, but
No, it's healing. It's
good.
healing. Yeah, yeah.
And thank you for all the labors that you brought to us all those years and still do.
Thank you.
As a way of completion today. So let's say these together. 72 laborers brought us this food. We should know how it comes to us. As we receive this offering, we should consider whether we understand its nature. As we desire the natural order of mind to be free from clinging, we must be aware of our greed. We take this food to support our life. We take this food to attain the way. Innumerable things make our life possible. We should appreciate how we come to be. As we receive the gift of our lives, we should consider whether we understand our nature. As we aspire to live to lives free from suffering, we must be aware how self-centered clinging contributes to unnecessary suffering. In humble gratitude, we accept what is generously offered in support of our lives and realize our lives as the way. For going along with me on a different path there, a little different ride today, and for being here today, and for all the wonderful things that each of you have brought. And Jessica?
Abamata's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity, and your support makes a huge difference. There's a link on the website for contributions, and I'll put that in the chat now. If you can stay around for the after inquiry, please feel free to do so.